All right, this is the opening of the regularly scheduled Norton Conservation Commission meeting for Monday, September 9th. It is now 6:30 p.m. and as is required, we have a preamble that needs to be read into the record. So Dan, if you could go ahead and do that.
Pursuant to Governor Healy's March 29th, 2023 bill extending several COVID-era policies and programs by allowing virtual meetings to continue from March 31st, 2023 to March 31st, 2025, this meeting of the Norton Conservation Commission will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and or parties with a right and or requirement to attend this meeting can be found at the end of this agenda. Members of the public attending this public hearing / meeting virtually will be allowed to make comments if they wish to do so during the portion of the hearing designated for public comment by raising their hand virtually or pressing *9 if participating by phone. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the Norton Cable website www.nortonmediacenter.org an audio or video recording transcript or other comprehensive report of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting.
Well, thank you, Dan. So we have a full board participating tonight. I'm Julian Kadish, Chair. We have Lisa Caruso, Vice Chair, Dan Pearson, Clerk, Mark Fernandez, Paxton Halshaw, Emma Vest, and Joe Carvalho. We also have our Director, John Thomas, and our Administrative Assistant, Megan Harrop. Our first item is a new public hearing. It's file number 250-1164 concerning 153 North Washington Street. It is a notice of intent with regard to a septic system replacement. Do we have a representative of the applicant?
Yes, Will Connolly, the consulting engineers.
And I assume you'll be able to share your screen in terms of bringing up the plan?
Yes, I will do that right now. It actually says it's disabled.
John, you're muted.
I'm not the main host, so I can't give rates. Megan, you're going to have to do it.
Oh.
Megan, are you there?
Yeah, hold on 1 second.
You should be all set now, Will.
Is everyone able to see that?
We can, and if you can just expand it just a little, I think it'll be easier. Wrong way. There we go. Maybe one more. Wrong way.
Doesn't really give you. There we go.
Oh, I see. It doesn't. One more plus click. Oh, that may be too much. Okay, looks good.
Yeah, so the site is 153 North Washington Street. There's an existing 4-bedroom house with a failed septic on site, which we're proposing an upgrade to. As you can see, there is a wetland bordering the site to the west. We're proposing a 1,500-gallon septic tank, 14 by 43 stone and pipe leaching field, which we were able to keep over 50 feet away from the wetlands. There's also a couple sheds on the property that are going to be removed prior to construction of the system. And there's also a portion of a paved walkway, which is going to be removed and eventually loamed and seeded. We're proposing silt sock, which goes around the limit of work. That'll remain in place until the site is stabilized with loam and seed. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
All right, John, I'm assuming this is pretty straightforward and you don't have any comments, or do you?
No, in my memo that I provided the commission, I don't have any major red flags or concerns with this project.
Any questions or comments from members of the commission?
I just have two quick ones. So is there a note somewhere in the plan that says all disturbed areas will be loamed and seeded after construction? And if there isn't, if you could add it.
We do typically have one. Let me see if I can find it.
Oh, yeah, I see it, 13 or 12. Can't see
Yeah.
it quickly.
Okay.
Okay, and then your silt sock. So we no longer put the stake through the silt sock because it compromises the netting and the material right away. So I would just ask you, I can hold up this issuance, to switch that detail out of the silt sock that shows the stakes on either side of it.
Okay. Yeah, we can certainly update that detail.
Okay, that's all I have.
So any questions from anyone in the meeting? And you can either go to the reactions button and raise your hand, or just take your mic off mute and introduce yourself. But if there are no further questions, this is a pretty straightforward repair with sedimentation control and simple project. So I think we have enough information to go ahead and entertain a motion to close for issuing of a order of conditions at our next meeting.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing for file 250-1164.
Second. We have a motion by Lisa, seconded by Joe. Roll call, Dan and Tama. How do you vote?
Aye.
Aye.
Mark and
Aye.
Lisa?
Aye.
Joe and Paxton?
Aye.
Aye. And I'll throw in an aye. The motion carries. So thank you, Will. I don't know if you really have to attend the next meeting, but we'll be discussing the orders and issuing the orders next time. And that meeting is on September 23rd.
Okay. Thank you all for your time.
You bet.
Thank you.
Next hearing, it's also a new hearing, file number 250-1163. It concerns 400 Arnold Palmer Boulevard, notice of intent, and it concerns renovations at the golf course, in particular holes 2, 7, and 10. So do we have a representative of the applicant?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Sarah Stearns with Beals and Thomas for TPC Boston. Also on the line is the club superintendent, Kyle Elliott, somewhere on here.
All right. And again, I think you'll be able to share your screen, Megan, should be all set for that.
Can't do it yet.
Right.
Megan, you just want to transfer host over to me?
Yep.
Thanks.
You should be all set.
You're good, sir.
Okay. How's that?
It's coming.
I'm going to leave it at the scale just for a moment, just to give you a sense of where this is on a very large property. And then we can go to the more detailed plans to get a better look at the proposed work, if that's okay with the commission.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay,
Yep.
so good evening. As I mentioned, Sarah Stearns, PWS with Beals and Thomas. So as the club has come before you in years past for updates to the layout of the 18-hole golf course, this is a similar type update that the club has gone through several iterations of different areas as part of their kind of master planning for the layout of the course, in reference to hosting various events and their typical play. Today, we're talking about three particular areas as the chair read, holes 10 up here, hole 2 in the middle of the page here, and then hole 7 down sort of at the bottom of the page. And I'll just kind of point out that, you know, hole 10 is some buffer zone work proposed. Hole 2 is a footbridge with some BBW work and replication. And then hole 7, we are outside of it, seemingly outside of the 100-foot buffer zone here, but it's very close. So we thought as part of this filing, we would include it and just ask for a confirmation of the wetland line so the club can feel confident proceeding with their project down in this piece of the property. So can scroll to the hole 2 proposal, which here you can see the second hole sort of wraps around this pond that was built by the club. The pond now is not completely open water. It varies throughout the season. So there's quite a bit of emergent vegetation that is exposed. There's shrubs along the edge. It's a very diverse system, which is not well documented by this map, but in real life, it's not just open water. So it's a very interesting area. What the club is proposing to do with the second hole that's currently wraps around this area with the second green in this area is to actually straighten this hole out with the proposed second green up in this zone for the future, which means that this area could be removed. And what the club would like to do here is expand the pond and create more of this wetland system where we have some open water, some emergent, and a gentle slope, and just kind of mimic what's already growing very nicely out here. Also, as part of this sort of straightening out of this hole is a new footbridge through this BBW here. We've tabulated the impact of the surface of the footbridge to approximately 1,750 feet within the wetland. And I'm happy to say that this creation of BBW and pond here totals about 7,000 square feet. So a significantly higher rate of replication to impact for the proposed boardwalk in this area here. There's also some removal of impervious area from the buffer zone that we can certainly provide to the commission. I don't think we submitted it with our application, but it's buffer zone related work where it would go from pervious to an impervious area. So that's kind of the big piece of this in terms of Conservation Commission interest, I would think. This is the 10th hole. sort of on the northern part of the property. Same thing, just elongating the hole. Excuse me, this is 7. Sorry about that. Same thing, elongating the hole, just changing the orientation of it. The BVW in this part of the site is flagged down in this area. There's a slope up, and the proposal is to, as part of straightening out and lengthening this hole, to push this portion of the cart path a little bit further. So again, you can see we're just over 100 feet from this wetland area. And again, just wanted to confirm that line, that line is acceptable and that we can work to stay out of that 100-foot. We can also pull this. We have some flexibility here, I think, to make sure we're out of that buffer zone. That's the preferred way to go on hole 7. And then finally, hole 10, which is in the northern part of the property. Again, just a reorientation of the green area. And I should note that neither of the ponds on hole 2 and hole 10 are used for irrigation. So it's not, necessarily water that's used for the club. These are natural pond. This one's a natural pond and just sort of an aesthetic feature, wildlife habitat area. So again, this is buffer zone work proposed to modify this hole. But I had seen multiple iterations of all of these designs to make, to achieve the club's goals while avoiding and minimizing work in jurisdictional resource areas to the extent that made sense. So our final proposal to you is something that's been drawn and redrawn several times over. And this is just a sketch of the proposed mitigation area. We were fortunate enough to have John Thomas join us on a visit to the areas of proposed work. So thank you, John, for taking the time to do that and taking a look at these resource areas and what the club is proposing. And so that's really it. I'll pause there and happy to answer questions that you may have, and Kyle as well.
I have a question. Actually, this is for John Thomas too. Having looked at this, on that hole 2, where you have the salient that you're going to sort of cut off to make a larger pond, are there any important riparian biological neighborhoods there, or any important species there, John? Or is it, I think it was said that this is a natural pond, not a,
This is a man-made pond here.
oh, that's a man-made pond.
Yeah.
Okay.
This was built
So-
when the golf course was constructed in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Okay, so the grass comes right down to the edge of the water or something, or,
Yeah, it's kind of elevated. This green is at the top of the bank here, and then it slopes down to the water body itself. And so the hole just sort of wraps around it. And the area, just to be clear, the area that we would propose work in is the manicured portion of this. So really just joining
okay, I see.
getting rid of what's being, managed as part of the golf course, of the green specifically, and creating more of a natural habitat to join with the existing pond. I didn't mean to, John, sorry, I didn't want to hijack your response.
I have nothing to respond to Dan with, except that it's not within a riparian corridor, and to my understanding, there isn't any sort of habitat mapped for this area.
Correct.
But you implied that the vegetation on the bank and in the pond is kind of evolving as time goes on. Was that part of the problem, that vegetation was obscuring the green?
I don't think so. I mean, Kyle can jump in, but I think this was really just a way to add more length to this particular hole. I think, from my understanding, the club is happy with how this pond is growing and providing all kinds of really beautiful and diverse habitat, no real invasives in here, just some really nice herbaceous that comes up when the water level drops a bit in the summer, and then some nice shrubs that are on the bank. In this particular area where it's more managed, it's not as, it's not as wild looking as other parts of the pond. And I think, from what I've seen and what I've heard from the club, they're, really embracing that and want more of it. So I think that's a good thing.
Right. Any questions from other commission members? Or John, do you have any comments you want to make?
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
On hole 10, to bring that up.
Yep.
Where we're coming into that pond, is that a man-made pond?
This one, I think, at least in part, was there when the golf course was constructed. Kyle, if you're.
I believe you're correct, Sarah.
Yeah.
I think it was man-made and then slightly expanded on upon initial construction of the golf course.
And, we're assuming jurisdiction on both. So we've added buffer zones to, your local and the 100-foot, just, sort of a conservative approach so that we're showing everything that's being proposed in these areas.
My question is, around this pond, are there going to be limited pesticide, insecticide, fertilizer uses in this area?
We always limit any pesticides that we're applying near any body of water. So we do it as minimal applications as possible. Our main focus is on removing any invasives that begin to grow. And really that's about it. So I think that area and the proximity of the pond with the new green would largely remain unchanged with the current location that we have.
One of my concerns is the fertility leachage back into that area.
So fertilizers or pesticides is the question.
All of the above.
Okay. I would assume, Kyle, that your complete best management practices addresses that, but
I mean, these are obviously sand-based greens.
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah, sand-based constructed greens with internal drainage. Correct.
Internal drainage back to pond, back to basin.
Each drain outfalls in a different area for each green. None of them, to the best of my knowledge, drain into a pond, into a waterway, into a direct pond like that. Obviously, our property, as you can see from the maps, has a lot of wetlands, but yeah, I believe that drain outfalls somewhere off the fairway, about 100 yards back.
So if you wouldn't mind, I would like to see some drainage detail on this one hole, just to make sure that we're not interfering with that wetland.
for number 10 specifically.
Please.
Yeah, and by way of history, this whole area that the golf course was designed into had been a large gravel excavation area. And then it kind of went back into some degree of revegetation. But much of this is not, these ponds and so on, are residual of excavated areas.
I think that area of the property specifically, judging by the soil in some of the native areas, was one of the areas they used for excavation.
I think the commission would be pleased, given that history, to see how far those remnant ponds have come with vegetation on the banks. And this one is wooded on this side and lush, with really interesting sedges and grasses filling in as well.
Well, I happen to have been on the commission when this project was originally presented, and we were impressed by how cleverly it was. It utilized the disturbed areas for the layout of the golf course.
Yeah, you can see it's
Oh,
kind
there
of a
was a- there
strange
was a question.
layout. You can see the upland that's available. I shouldn't say strange, but different.
Yeah, I have a number of questions. So the first one is the folks were before us several years ago, and at one point, Jennifer, the last agent, had asked you to go back through the files to figure out what the cumulative impacts were for this course. And I believe maybe the last order of conditions had that in the findings. So John Thomas, if you could find that. So in other words, the meter's ticking, right? They only have 5,000 square feet that they can impact on this site. So at one point, they kept, coming back to us for whatever they needed to do. And at one point we said, well, hold on, we gotta keep track of what's going on here. So it asked somebody to uncover that last order of conditions to see what limit we're at towards the 5,000. And if we can go through hole 2. So can you talk about the detail of how that walkway is going to be? Is it pile supported? Is it going to span the wetland? What the diameter of the piles are, what it's made out of, what the grading is going to look like. I haven't seen any grading on any of the, probably just maybe zoomed out a little too far.
Yeah, I mean, these sheets are just overview sheets,
Yep.
but similar to the other footbridges that we've permitted with the commission out here, the same design, tile supported.
Do you have a detail?
I believe so, and if not, we're certainly happy to provide that. These plans are enormous, so it just might take a second to load.
Sure.
Color.
And is it going to be, is it timber or what's it going to be constructed of? You know?
Yep. Timber, like all the others that are out there, nothing different from what has been proposed and approved. Yes, the
Okay.
detail is on the 9th page.
Okay, so how many, is that a cross section? How many tiles? Oh,
I can't
you have
seem
in
to.
wetlands?
I can't seem to center that on my screen for some reason.
Okay.
Here we go. I'd have to get back to you on the number of piles, honestly. I don't have that information at my disposal because we were told after our last proposal with the commission for a footbridge on the 8th hole, where the commission denied the project and we were issued a superseding order from DEP that the piles were not what the concern was for tabulating impact. It was the entirety of the surface of the bridge. So we appreciate that and took that tack on the calculation of impact for this one. So I could make a note and get back to you if you want to get the number of piles on this length.
Well, certainly, because although I appreciate the fact that the footprint of the bridge, with shading impacts is the total impact, we're approving a bridge with piles. So we need to know how many piles you're proposing, or what the diameter is, how many there are. So to me, it's not just the footprint, we're approving the number of piles.
Right. No problem.
So if you can go back to there's a grading plan? Just trying to get a handle on what the grading is associated with the footpath and then maybe the touchdown points of the bridge deck.
Yep, it's pretty minor since the grade is quite shallow in this area and we're connecting to existing paths. This is not the best sheet to look at this. These are more just for presentation purposes, but we can get you something with an inset that shows the proposed grading. But again, since we're tying into existing where there's very little grade change, the required grading to make that transition is quite minimal.
Right. So typically when we approve a set of plans, it's what the contractor's going to, not contractor set of plans, but if you were to give this to a contractor, how do they know what the grades are? So that when we compare this to the as-built, we're not going to know if you're not showing us what the grades are.
Right.
So we will need a grading plan.
Yeah, and in other areas of the proposed work, there is more grade. So you can see like on 7 where there's more grading involved. I think over here, there's just not much to show, but I will confirm that and we'll get that back to you.
Okay. I'm also curious as to why. I understand that it's a limited project, but typically you only play the limited project card if you can't meet the performance standards. So what
Yeah.
performance standard can't you meet?
We can meet it, and you can
Oh.
ignore that. We can strike that. I'm always sort of mixed on whether I've been told to it if you meet it, include it, and then other
Right.
times we've been advised by DEP to not include it if you don't need it. So
Right,
I put it in there. We can ignore it. We don't have to include that, but we can meet the performance standards, and obviously the replication is significantly beyond
Okay.
the impact. So ignore it.
so yeah, I would wanna know, how does this 1750 square feet, what are the impacts to date at the club? Are we approaching 5,000? You're already there. So.
Oh, yeah. I mean, but I think the key to that is it's not 5,000 square feet for eternity on a piece of land. It is 5,000 square feet. Then if that's mitigated, then you're not limited to that for the rest of your life, the rest of the life of the project or of the land. And that a perfect example to just sort of support that is the last footbridge that the club proposed that was approved by DEP. We talked about that. This property owner has done multiple projects, including the original layout, which had significant wetland impacts and mitigation associated with it. Here we are talking about a relatively small project on 400 acres. And, we brought that up with DEP because I remember Jennifer talking about that. And their response was, if you've mitigated or if you've replicated for those impacts, then you really kind of start back at zero. You just have to continue to mitigate appropriately.
Okay, I would still like to know what the total is so we can keep track.
Okay,
So
that's in the file because I remember going through an excruciating exercise of unearthing old files in the basement of the town hall
Yeah.
and using other people's work to close out those orders of conditions that had been left open. So all of that data is in the commission's hands.
Right, but I think you need to, it's the burden of proof to carry that forward in every filing in the
I have
future. Yeah,
I
that's
have a
all.
binder at my
Yep.
office with all of that information that I'd be happy to provide.
Okay. So this is really not, we'll put it this way, this is a wish. This isn't something that you absolutely need to do to access that hole. It's because you're reconfiguring the hole. You don't really need to go through the wetland. If we can zoom in on number 2, please, again.
Yeah.
So this is just like a wish list. It's on
Well,
your-
it is necessary if this hole gets straightened out and pulled away from the pond because
Right.
there's no longer a way to, this path is no longer viable. So yes, it is to get the foot traffic off of the reconfigured hole, it would be necessary. And, we tried to pick the crossing with the least amount of impact, again, just tying into those existing paths. There's a shorter way to go, but there's more earthwork, there's more site work to get that bridge connected. We laid out a few different options crossing it at different locations, but the grading was more significant. So this is kind of the path of least resistance, if you will, just to try to match up with what's existing.
Okay, and then are you showing any cut, you need to show the cuts and the fills for the actual greens themselves? I'm just seeing a dashed outline. So I assume that's just the limit of the green and not the grading. So
yeah, we did include, so this, what we've laid out is based on an architectural grading plan. And so we included this was sort of the vision by their golf course architect. And then, we transposed that and included the, requisite information for the commission's review. Oh, bless you. I would certainly not propose to grade a green as an engineering company because that is a very specific skill for a golf course architect, particularly for a golf course of this caliber. So, if it's in the buffer zone, we can ask for some more information, but there's not a lot happening in this particular type of area.
Oh, all right, let's go back to 2. If you're proposing any grading to create that green, we need the grading. And it should be done by a civil because we expect it every time somebody comes through the door. So the landscape architect has the vision, the civil makes it come to life and makes it work. So that's the job of the civil. So I assume you're gonna have to get a civil on board. So for instance.
We are a civil engineer, yeah.
Okay, then you need to grade it out. So what's the top of the elevation of that green going to be?
Yeah, so we're at 133.8.
So is
Yeah,
that
we
what the
can-
top
we
of
can-
the,
Yeah, we can revise that and get you something if you want to see.
yeah, we need to show the fill on the whole thing. Are you cutting? Are you filling? How is that green going to be constructed again? Because when we go back to the as-built, we know we have to look at, how much fill did they put in? Did they need a wall? You know,
Yeah,
this is basic.
I mean, it's not a significant change here, but I hear what you're saying and understood.
Yeah, we would not, approve, line work. It has to be grading. So let's go into that wetland. So you mentioned that the functions and values of the pond right there, or I think were those marginal on that side? So what I'm trying to get at is you're putting a footpath through a wetland. So what's the value and the function of that wetland versus what you're replicating? Is it marginal? Is it high value? And what are we getting in turn for the mitigation? So you look at what you're impacting, what is the value of that wetland versus what you're recreating?
So this is a BVW, and
Yes.
where it's largely shrub saplings in this area. This area will be a mix of open water and palustrin shrub scrub wetland. And again, this whole area is variable depending on the season. And their club is not using this for irrigation purposes, so the water level is not being artificially manipulated. It's really just a seasonal change. So we're seeing in here a pretty diverse, ever-changing wetland system made up of open water and that emergent shrub scrub area. So, you know, they are very close, at least in proximity. But, you know, to your point, this is a BVW and this would be replicated as open water and shrub scrub. So not identical, but, you know, something that I think would add value for a variety of purposes in this particular area.
But open water is not the same as a BVW. So we get, you know, you can throw the number 7,000 out there, but what are we getting? I don't want 5,000 of open water. So we're really not getting 7,000 of BVW. So how much BVW are we getting versus open water sheet? Because anybody can dig a hole and call it a water sheet and call it reputation, but it's really not under the act, right? Because it should be the BVW.
Right. So we're just this was just sort of a jumping off point for this conversation here. You know, I think the idea is to plant close to the bank and where we're anticipating that the water level will be variable, similarly to the other areas along the pond. And from there, kind of out in this area would likely be open water for the majority, but seeding and planting for 75% of it, just eyeballing it, of that 7,000 is what the anticipated.
Okay, so we're gonna need,
is.
I'm gonna need numbers. I wanna know how much of that is gonna be vegetated versus open water.
Sure, yeah.
To make sure we're at least getting 2-to-1 for what we're losing.
Yeah.
In the BVW.
Yeah, and you know, we've seen on the other footbridges on the property, I know, you know, to the letter of the law, it's an impact, but there are a lot of footbridges out here and they are, you know, doing the area below and adjacent to them are really thriving. So it's not, you know, a desecration of the BVW that it runs through, and they've been built and maintained to the point where there is still sunlight being captured. We've got growth under and around all of them. So, you know, we've got to follow what the regulations say in terms of impact mitigation, certainly, but just, you know, for the commission's understanding, this is something that the club has done numerous times, and I would say successfully. So, you know, I think that yes, it's an impact, but it's not a loss of BVW in the.
So in summary, we're gonna need to see grading around all those greens for 2, 7, and 10. And some details of the crossing itself, how many piles, quantification of the difference, the delta between the BDW and the open water sheet. And are there any, and then the cumulative overall impacts, so we can carry that forward in our findings. Are there any flood zones out here?
Not in these proposed work areas.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any further questions from the commission?
The only other questions I had was showing potential soil stockpile locations, Sarah.
Okay,
You just want to show those on the plans,
yep,
so we know where those are going to be.
no problem.
All right. But besides that, I think the commission asked a majority of the questions I had as well.
Any questions from anyone in the meeting? And as I mentioned before, you can either go to the reaction button and press the raise your hand, or you can take your mic off mute and just introduce yourself. So we do have a variety of items that need to be discussed. So I think we will need to continue this hearing. Our next meeting is on the 23rd of September, and we have October 7th and October 28th after that. Do you have a preference? You want to continue to the next meeting?
When would the supplemental information need to be received? I guess that's kind of the key for timing.
So I need the information the Thursday before the meeting, so I
Okay.
can take a look at it and then provide a report to the commission.
Okay, the 19th then? John?
Yeah.
Okay. I think we can do that. That's more than a week to get that pulled together. I think the 23rd is,
All right.
is that good for you? Where are you?
I'm here. That works for me.
Okay.
All right. So unless there are further questions, I think we can consider a motion to continue this hearing.
Oh,
So moved.
one second.
Yeah.
John Thomas, your note said that DEP had provided comments.
Yeah, they did have a couple comments. I'm sure Sarah's reading through those and she can definitely provide response.
Okay,
Yes,
if you could do that for the next meeting.
I'll include that in the
If
letter.
you could go over them. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank
A
you.
lot of them were similar to what we talked about tonight, so.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, sorry, was that Dan? Who was that?
No, that's all right, Lisa.
Yeah, so we have a motion from Dan to continue this hearing until the 23rd. Do we have a second?
Second.
So a motion by Dan, seconded by Joe, for continuation of the hearing for file number 250-1163 until September 23rd. So roll call vote beginning with Mark and Tama,
Aye.
Aye.
Paxton and Joe,
Aye.
and Lisa and Dan,
Aye.
All right,
and I'll throw in an aye. So the motion carries. Thank you, Sarah and Kyle.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, nice seeing you all again. Bye.
Our next item is file number 250-1163, 170 West Main Street. It was an ANRAD discussion. There is a request for continuation until, well, it would have to be the 23rd, not the 29th of September.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to continue that ANRAD discussion to the 23rd of September.
Motion by Dan, seconded by?
Second.
Seconded by Mark. Tama and Paxton, how do you vote on that?
Aye.
I said aye as well, sorry.
Okay, Joe and Lisa,
Aye.
Aye.
and Mark and Dan.
Aye.
Aye.
And I'll throw in an aye, so motion carries. Next item is, file number 250-1162, 0 Hill Street, concerning construction of a plus or minus 30,000 square foot, industrial building. And, Andrew, it looks like you're the representative.
Yep. Yeah. Good evening. I'm Andrew Platt with Bowler, here with Luke DiStefano, also a Bowler on the phone line, and John Furyk, owner of Premier Fence. So the plan tonight is just to give you a brief project update and then address some of the comments raised last time, then ultimately ask for a continuance to the next meeting. So with that, any questions before I get into this?
You'll be able to share your screen for a plan.
Yep. Yeah, if you can just enable that for me, please.
Should be all set, Andy.
Okay, thanks. Okay, it should be popping up now, hopefully.
It has appeared.
Okay. And I'm not sure if you can see things off to the left margin. I know I can see them on my screen, but there's not much I can do about that at the moment, I don't think so. So here's the site rendering. As we discussed last time, we've got the 30,000 square foot building, the area of pavement in the dark gray, and then the gravel laydown area. Since the last meeting back on August 12th, I believe it was, nothing really much has changed. We're waiting for peer review comments. So once we get those, we're going to revise the plans if needed and get those back to you in Weston and Sampson. So that's kind of where we are with the project. Just waiting for those peer review comments. Now, to address some of the comments raised last time, I know there were concerns about the gravel laydown area. We have found out that basically there's not going to be any vehicles using that gravel laydown area except for a forklift. Approximately 6 times a day, it's going to be accessing materials out there. The materials to be stored are basically just your fence fabrication materials, posts, guardrail, chain link fencing, just PVC materials. So nothing hazardous, pretty much all inert materials. And as I stated, there's going to be no vehicles. All vehicles will be paved, or they'll all be parked on the paved areas. So other than that forklift going out there half a dozen times a day, there's really not much activity. I know there are concerns about snow removal too. So just based on the current operations for Premier Fence over in their Canton facility, they don't usually remove snow. It's usually during the slow time of the year for them. So they're not as busy, and just plowing the snow through those stockpiles just creates more trouble than it's worth. So they leave the snow on there. And if they do need to plow it, they raise the plow, an inch or two above the grade. So there's no disturbance to the ground. And speaking of the ground, so I think there was also a question about the material to be used. We're planning on maybe a 2-inch or less or smaller stone for the gravel, topped off with maybe a denser grade of the gravel. So that's pretty much what's going to happen with the laydown area. We would definitely prefer that it remains gravel rather than paved, just for the reasons stated. And then also moving on to the other issue that was discussed was the SWIP. So we're definitely planning on providing a SWIP when we respond to the peer review comments. It's all going to be one package. So we'll provide a written SWIP in accordance with the EPA and PDES requirements for the current general permit, and also a phased construction plan. And basically the idea here is, since we know we're filling this site, we're going to basically fill the perimeter of the site first, most likely, just creating like a berm around the perimeter, and we'll have some low points for temporary sediment basins, probably to the north, south, and to the east. So that's the general plan. And I think that was pretty much it for the issues raised last time, but I'd be happy to, address anything else that you might have in your minds, or any other questions that might come up.
So what you're saying then is, this is a similar layout with regard to a concrete surface adjacent to a compacted gravel surface at another location, and they're accessing the gravel with existing forklifts now. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. Yeah. This is gonna be the same kind of operation as what's going on in Canton right now. So we kind of know what's going to happen just based on that.
So I assume the tires on the forklift are such that they don't displace the gravel. They don't have the kind of loading that would just push the gravel out of the way.
As far as I know, yeah, it's not, I think it's a 9,000 pound forklift, which I'm not really sure what the dimensions are, but I don't think it's a small, I mean, the tires are fairly wide. So they aren't gonna be, displacing gravel.
All right. So you're saying they have that working for them now at a different site. And this is a basically replication of that same kind of plan.
Correct.
All right.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Joe.
Did we do anything to address the fuel storage area?
Not, well, we haven't revised the plans yet, but there will be definitely secondary containment, and I believe you wanted us to move the fuel pumps within the paved area. So yeah, we will do that.
And will there be any ballards or anything around the structure to add additional protection?
Yeah, we're gonna put bollards around. Those little black dots are what are bollards, and this plan will just simply move those forward into the paved area.
Thank you.
Any other questions from either commission members or anyone in the meeting? So this is still something that has additional information coming forth from peer review, is that correct?
Correct. I think, well, we were expecting those peer review comments either last Friday or today. We still haven't seen them, so hopefully we'll see them tomorrow. And then the plan is to turn those responses around as quickly as possible and get those to you. I believe you just stated you need to see things by the 18th in order to be heard or to be on the next meeting. So that's the plan right now. But it depends on when we get those peer review comments.
Yeah, Andy, the first thing that Megan's doing tomorrow is hounding Weston and Sampson to get you that peer review. It's been long enough.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, they're getting sick of my emails, I promise you.
Good. Glad to hear it.
So I just did have one question. So where is the location that the forklifts will be kept?
Well,
When they're not in use?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's gonna be inside the building, but it'll definitely be on the pavement. All vehicles will be stored on the pavement at the very least.
So ideally, if you're going to leave that laydown area as stone and it's only a forklift going back there, is it going to be is there going to be any type of fence or any type of buffer between the edge of the pavement and the laydown area so that trucks won't be tempted to drive back there?
No, we don't have any kind of barrier right now.
I can address that, Andy.
No, thanks, John.
So the material is stored in aisles. The trucks will not drive down the aisles. There's no reason for the trucks to go down there. Just imagine a lumber yard with aisles of stock in the yard. The forklift will just go out, retrieve the material, bring it into the shop, we manufacture. The truck comes into the yard, we unload the truck on the pavement, we take that stock and we put it into the gravel inventory areas.
Okay.
Hope that does it.
Yeah, we just don't want to be like the truck police here. And having to look at this, 2 years from now and seeing a bunch of equipment and trucks all over the place back there. We don't want to be in that position. So.
Right, and the only purview that we would have is within 100 feet of the resource area for this project anyway. So that'll be a condition in the order that we would issue anyway, is that the storage of vehicles cannot be within the 100-foot buffer, unless it's within a paved area, and that would specifically say something like that.
Okay.
Would they be I guess my question is, would the applicant and his client be okay with that?
Yes,
that's
our intent.
Okay, so that would be a potential condition that we would put in any issued order for this project.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you both, Johns. Thank you.
All right, so unless there are further questions or comments, I think we're all set for a motion for continuation until September 23rd.
So moved.
Second.
So Dan, that was you, right?
Yes.
Motion by Dan, seconded by Joe. Tama and Paxton, how do you vote?
Aye.
Aye.
Joe and Lisa,
Aye.
Aye.
and Mark and Dan?
Aye.
Aye.
And I'll throw in an aye as well. Thank you, Andrew. We'll see you next time.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, that concludes our public hearings. We now have, requests for certificates of compliance, and all of them are listed as being, stabilized and all set for fulls. Our first, is file number 250-11, 5739 Anton Drive. I believe it was a, septic system upgrade, and that is listed as fully stabilized.
Yeah, this one was, the one that they had to do real quick. They had emergency repair, so they actually got the seed stabilized, which was good.
So I just noticed the number after this is also 1157, so which number is it?
Or where,
Is
where,
1157?
Sorry, the one that is 1157 for 120 Mansfield is incorrect.
Okay.
So that one should be on the actual agenda.
Oh, okay, sorry,
Yeah.
I'm looking at your notes. Okay,
Yep.
120 Mansfield's 1109.
okay, all right, thanks. All right, I'll make a motion.
Apologies, copy and
That's
paste.
okay. I'll make a
I'm
motion. to
human.
issue A full COC for 250-1157.
Second.
we have a motion by Lisa, seconded by Dan for a full COC, Tama and Paxton. How do you vote?
Aye.
Aye.
And Joe and Lisa,
Aye.
Aye.
Dan and Mark.
Aye.
Aye.
And I'll throw in an aye, the motion carries. Next one is file number 250-1109, 120 Mansfield Avenue. And that is the Norton Senior Center. So it's already done, huh?
Yeah, it's all stabilized. Everything's good to go, and we received all the engineer's affidavit and as built. So everything looks according to plan. So, and it's stabilized with grass, which is great.
I'll make a motion to issue a full COC for 250-1109.
Second.
A motion by Lisa, seconded by Joe, Tama, and Paxton.
Seconded by me, just.
Oh, that was Paxton. Okay. I don't know. You guys sound similar sometimes. So Tama and Paxton, how do you vote?
Aye.
That was,
Aye.
and Joe and Lisa,
Aye.
Aye.
and Dan and Mark.
Aye.
Aye.
And I'll throw in an aye. The motion carries. Next item is file number 250-1114, 306, 308 East Main Street, which is the work done behind or attached to Bernie and Phil's warehouse area.
So just an update, I did receive the engineer's affidavit and letter today. I looked through it and they acknowledged that all work has been done per the plans. I went out there last week, I looked at the plans. Everything seemed to be in accordance and the whole entire site has been stabilized as a requirement.
All right.
So I'll make a motion to issue a full COC for 250-1114.
Second.
Second.
Oh, you're trying to trick me. All right, that time Joe got it. So motion by Lisa, seconded by Joe, Tama, and Paxton.
Aye.
Aye.
And Joe and Lisa,
Aye.
Aye.
Dan and Mark.
Aye.
Aye.
And I'll throw in an aye, motion carries. I didn't see the draft minutes. They're still cooking.
Yeah, I wasn't able to complete them between getting back from vacation and we're all busy boxing up everything for the new move to
So
town
how
hall.
was that vacation?
It was amazing. I recommend anybody go to the Greek islands. Gorgeous.
Well,
So-
a lot-
Before we get into further business, actually Brandon Carr's here tonight. I forgot to put him on the agenda, so apologies for that, but he's here to talk about a new project or an old project being revised over at lot 1 over on 2 East Main Street, the one that was that they had previously that we did approve. So he's going to share his screen and kind of give you an update as to kind of the design that they're going to go with next.
Good evening, everyone. So just as can everyone see my screen?
Not quite yet. It's coming.
How about now?
Now it's there.
All right, so we were before you, I think earlier this spring or last fall, I forget what it was, over the winter. And we had received a notice of intent for work on this front parcel here out at Blue Star. It was approved as 2 separate buildings, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and then we came back and we were merging those lots and proposed a 30,000 square foot flex space industrial building up front here. You approved the plan. There was pretty much just a little work in the buffer zone. It was actually mostly removing some existing disturbance out of the buffer zone. We needed a special permit through planning, which was denied, but we've been working with the planning board and planning staff, and we think we've come to a plan that we're before them in 2 weeks, hopefully that they will approve. So wanted to just show you the changes. They're very minor, and in my opinion, I'm not sure if they need a formal modification from the board, but that's what we're here to ask you. So this is the plan we submitted a few weeks ago to John, but basically the change was we shrunk the building by about 25 feet off the front. So this is East Main Street on your left. This is Leonard Street, the corner here. Your jurisdiction is in the rear of the site here. There's a 100-foot buffer off of the BVW here. And then there's a 200-foot riverfront off the stream in the back. So you can see we have the actual only work within your buffer is this area, which was there's some soil stockpiles that we're removing and revegetating. So none of the drainage changed, none of the disturbance near the jurisdictional limits of the board of your board changed. It was literally sliding the building back 25 feet or so. So we're losing about 3,000, a little over 3,000. I think this building was a little over 30,000, so 3,000 square feet of building. And we're leaving the parking and stormwater and everything the same and extending the sidewalk. We're adding a little bit of sidewalk for maybe some like outdoor retail show space or something like that, depending on, we don't have an actual user for this building yet. So, but other than that, so the impervious coverage on the site overall decreases slightly, but we left the stormwater, instead of redesigning everything, we just left it all the same. So the building still goes to, there's an underground infiltration system here. There's a small sand filter out here, an infiltration basin that handles the front parking lot, and then similarly an infiltration pond and sand filter in the back here that handles the truck court. So that's what we're here to show you tonight, and just verify that the board would be okay with this change.
So it sounds like it's just well, first of all, do I have to recuse? Brandon, I don't know.
It's up to you. No?
Did I last time? I don't know. If this was-
I think you did last time.
Okay, I will do
But-
it again. Sometimes I don't know, but
That's fine. I think from my perspective, and I'm gonna look at this, is that it's a minor modification, and I don't think it meets the amendment criteria. I mean, you're not changing the limit of work. You're not really doing anything major. It's gonna be an overall an improvement to the property is removing a portion of the building. So I would be okay with just accepting the modification plan and just putting in the file, if the board members agree. I can just arrange to have that done as part of this discussion.
Yeah, to me, this falls under administrative decision.
And that's what John and I had spoken about, but, you know, just to be safe, we wanted to show you and keep you updated on the project, so, I'd appreciate that, and, hopefully we'll be approved by planning in a couple weeks, and, they can get started on this.
So, John, do you want a motion and a vote to say that this is minor enough that it falls within your administrative discretion?
So because this is a discussion item, I would wait until Brandon and his team get a decision from the planning board, then come back in front of us. So that way we can have a formal acceptance of the plan. And, you know, there's no need for us to modify the amendment. We just need to just accept the plan as an updated plan. Does that seem appropriate, Brandon?
Yeah, I think that's fine, so, once it's kind of blessed by planning, we, you know, assuming the plan doesn't change, we can just come back for a formal recommendation. I think that'd be fine with us.
Okay.
All right.
All right. That's it then. There's no need for a vote or anything tonight. Just keep us updated.
All right, we'll see you in a few weeks, hopefully.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a
Thank
good night.
You're right. All right, we are, I guess we're at conservation office updates, et cetera.
Yeah, so we are receiving a new town hall. Pretty exciting. They started delivering all the storage bins, all 600 of them today. So we're up to our necks in orange bins. We're ready for.
How did that go?
You got a lot of work tomorrow, Reagan. I already started, so. But then we're also going to have a new conference room right across from where the conservation office is going to be. So that's pretty exciting. I got to actually take a tour of the new building. So everything looks, well, the furniture wasn't in, but everything looks a lot better than what we currently have. So that's a plus. So to keep it going with conversation here, I did speak with Brad Holmes from ECR. I'm going to be meeting with him tomorrow to look at the limits of restoration area, and we can go out there and stake it, and that way they can get going. And then, so the potential enforcement action over at 258 Plain Street, they are actually kind of in a pickle. They're not going to be pursuing the expansion of their facility or the, I guess, the addition that they were proposing. So they will be coming in with a restoration plan. They've hired a wetland consultant to help them out with that. So they'll be coming with a restoration plan for mitigating the previous non-compliance. So we'll be getting an update on them. And then violation with the YMCA. I just got word today from the YMCA that they've contracted a surveyor. So they'll be going out this week to take a look at those markers and then I guess identifying them in the field for me to evaluate, and that way we can kind of get a better sense as to kind of what the potential mitigation needs are if required. We'll see. I don't know exactly the extent of work because I can't find the markers myself. So we'll see where those are, and we'll make heads and tails of it hopefully next week or the couple days after that. So, but that's all I have for those updates. We do have a couple new projects coming in, and it's going to be interesting because we try to move everything at the same time. So, but eventually we'll have a new conference room to have meetings potentially. So it's great. I'm very excited for that. And not have to worry about water falling on us.
All right.
John, were you going to say something about what was happening at the corner of 123, 140?
Yes.
Right.
What would you like to know, Dan?
Well, what's happening there?
So the same folks that are looking at rehabbing the old library, they're looking at potentially retrofitting the interior of that building to accommodate some mixed use. So it would be it would be residential and potentially a commercial operation. So they're gonna add another floor, I think, potentially to it. So we'll see how that works out. I haven't seen any plans. I just know that they were looking to clear out the space and clear out the work area. So, and the fire department was over there to kind of do demolition work and exercises too. So they gifted that to the fire department before they actually tear down the building. So, but the property's not in our jurisdiction, but I did inform them that any new development they do over there needs to meet performance standards for stormwater compliance. So planning board's aware of it. So they'll be handling that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other updates anybody else wants to give? Megan says go to Greece. Right?
Everybody should
Well,
go to Greece.
Yeah, well, I also was, did some Greek islands among others. And very shortly after, the ship I was on was in Santorini, 7 cruise ships docked at Santorini, and something like 7,000 tourists watched the sunset. And the local authorities were trying to come up with a plan as to how to deal with this future. The only advice they had for the residents was stay in your houses. So,
Yeah,
So-
the cable cars on Santorini were rough, I will say that.
but I went to the volcano instead of going up on the cable cars. That was nice.
So that's all I have for this regular meeting. I know that was discussed at the previous meeting that we'd like to potentially adjourn this meeting.
I have one more, John, before you,
Okay.
sorry to cut you off. I
Okay.
would like to make the same motion that we have to, brain melt there. I'd like to make a motion that the following meeting from this, that we have the option to move into executive discussion if we do not complete our task this evening.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion made by Joe and seconded by Lisa. Tama and Paxton, how do you vote?
Aye.
Aye.
Joe and Lisa,
Aye.
Aye.
and Dan and Mark.
Aye.
So I'm gonna say no, only because I did a little reading up on it, and there's specific reasons we can go into executive session, which I don't think we've met.
Okay,
Well, I think Joe just mentioned it's a continuation of tonight's meeting, topic, so I'm okay with that.
all right, and I'll throw in an aye. But with regard to your point, Mark, I don't know what this. I didn't see. I wasn't here at the last meeting, so I'm not sure what the items are. But I guess our next step will be to go into adjourn this meeting and go into executive session for a more in-depth discussion.
So motion to adjourn and enter into executive session, but we will
So
not,
move.
we will not be coming back to this meeting. So
So
All
we
right.
have to sign up and to put the other address in, the other URL
No,
in.
no, you can just
No.
stay in.
thing.
Norton Media is just gonna get off the call.
Oh, so
I see.
the other Zoom address is actually this Zoom address.
It should be, right, Megan?
yes, it should be.
But then members of the public can still pop into the meeting or not?
No, I'm not gonna let them in.
Oh, okay. All right, so we have a motion made by Dan, and seconded by
Me.
By
Lisa.
Lisa to adjourn this meeting. So Tama and Paxton, how do you vote?
Aye.
Aye.
And Joe and Lisa,
Aye.
Aye.
and Mark and Dan.
So,
Aye.
again, for clarification, are we adjourning and going into executive session or just adjourning?
We are adjourning to go into executive session. We're adjourning this meeting and then
Separate vote for executive session.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then aye.
So I'll throw in an aye, so that completes the adjournment of our regular meeting. And so now Norton Media Center is going to leave, but who's gonna,
I'll make a motion to enter into executive session.
Second,
all right, we have a motion made and I think Dan seconded it. Motion made by Lisa, seconded by Dan. Is that correct?
yes.
All right, and so Tama and Paxton, how do you vote?
Hi.
Aye.
Joe and Lisa,
Aye.
Aye.
Mark and Dan.
No.
Aye.
All right, and I'll throw in an aye.